Oh, you're muted, Louisa.
Good evening, everyone. It is September 24th, 6:06 p.m. and the Urban Design Committee meeting is now called to order. Urban Design Commission, pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Luisa Oliveira, and I'm the Director of Public Space and Urban Forestry for the City of Somerville, and I am the co-chair for tonight's meeting. We will start with a roll call of the commission members present. Frank Valdez.
Present.
Andrew Arbog. Absent. Deborah Fennick.
Here.
Tim Talon.
Present.
And Sherry Wang.
Present.
So we do have a quorum, and I'd like to continue with general business. Our first order of business is the approval of the August 26th, 2024 meeting minutes. If any of you has any comments or things noted in the sections that need correction, please let us know. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for August 26th, 2024?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? And I think here I have to do the roll call vote. So Frank,
Yes.
Deborah,
I have to abstain because I was not in attendance at that meeting.
thank you. Tim
Yes.
and Sherry.
I don't think I was in attendance either, but I
Okay,
did read them and found them very compelling.
Sherry, that may have been the meeting that you sent that you listened to the
Oh,
recording for.
I did. I listened to the recording. Yes. Yeah. So approve. Yes.
so we have 4 approvals, and those meetings then will be entered into the record.
Louisa, Madam Chair, if I may clarify, that is 3 approvals and 1 abstention.
Frank, Deborah, Tim, and Sherry. Oh, yes, sorry, my apologies. Deborah did abstain.
Yeah.
Thank you. So for design reviews for Assembly Square Block 9, this is continued from September 10th of 2024. A note that the development is subject to any previously approved PUD of the former ASMD zoning district. Give me one second.
Could I,
Oh,
Louisa, can I ask that while you are reading through that, can I ask that those who need to present raise their hands so
I
I
have
can
to
promote them?
recuse myself, and I'll recuse myself.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Thanks, Louisa. All you.
sure. So the development is subject to any previously approved PUD of the former ASMD zoning district must provide the following: conceptual landscape plans and pedestrian perspectives for any public realm, including the sidewalk, public realm improvements, frontage area landscaping, and publicly accessible on-site open space, axonometric and perspective massing diagrams, and architectural elevations, including details of the building base. I would like to remind the applicant that you have 20 minutes to present, and you will present on the general building. Then we will vote on the massing and the facade, the design guidelines, and any additional guidance. Whenever you are ready, applicants, you may begin.
I will say I'm having trouble promoting Kristen for some reason. There we go. Oh, it declined. Okay, sorry, Kristen. Who will be presenting this evening and needs screen share?
think that'll be Kristen.
In that case, Kristen, I have to promote you.
Hello. Thank you. I'm
Hello.
glad you were able to promote me.
And applicant, you have 20 minutes and I will start the timer as soon as you begin speaking.
Just a moment. I need to give her share screen permission. Yes, there we go.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so actually, I think Matt Snell and or Sarah Ford are going to start it off by talking about our design guidelines.
Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, Sarah.
Okay. Sarah and Louisa, I didn't know if that was okay to present the design guidelines first so that Matt could jump off for the evening before we got into the longer presentation, which is the building design and architecture.
Sure, that's no
Yes.
problem.
Okay. So Matt, if you want to give a brief intro on why we do this.
Sure. Just as context, when the PUD was originally approved in 2006, there were design guidelines kind of across the entire development. But as the project has progressed over the last nearly 2 decades, the amendments to the PUD require submittal of updated guidelines for each block. That way we can kind of refine the design and elements and form as we go along and the projects move forward. And so pursuant to the kind of last iteration of the PUD, the process is that we present the design guidelines along with the design of the building to the design commission, who reviews it and provides any comments and thoughts. And then we file an amendment application for the PUD with the planning board at the same time that we file for a special permit for each block. And prior to approving the special permit, the board reviews the design guidelines and approves those, incorporating them into the PUD. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen, unless anybody has any questions on that process, who can kind of run through the guidelines quickly, which you'll find really reflect the building that you've been looking at already.
Yes, thank you, Matt. So the key design guidelines that we developed in conversation with the city for this building are, first of all, the main entrance should be located on Harold Cohen Way to support the city's long-term vision for the neighborhood. As you might remember from before, we discussed how it's really tiny here, but how the future master plan for Harold Cohen Way envisions it as a very pedestrian-oriented thoroughfare. Second, we think that a second entrance should be located over on the other side of the building, closer to the T station and bus stop to support transportation access. Third, the active storefronts on the ground level are to be located on Foley Street and wrap the corners. Fourth, designated significant corners to exhibit differentiation of materials and character, responding to the natural hub at the corner of Foley Street and Grand Union Boulevard, and also to the planned future park at the corner of Harold Cohen Way and Auto Workers Way. Finally, vehicle ingress and egress for parking and access for service and loading to be located along the utilitarian corridor of Auto Workers Way, similar to how the adjacent building is using the street. With that, we can move on to the design presentation unless anyone has any questions. Okay. The Okay, so here again is that future master plan showing our sites. And a refresher view of our building at one of those significant corners, the corner of Grand Union Boulevard and Foley Street. We heard primarily 6 items of feedback. And on the next slides, we will go through these one by one. The first item we heard was the design team to clarify and improve on the building's volumetric relief. We did a study to look at ways to add a little bit more differentiation and recess here in these areas. So the first thing we did was we updated the renderings to show the recesses more accurately. If you look back at the original, it was showing the banding in the slot as actually proud of our sort of primary facade, and that was not the intent. So we updated that. We increased the recesses where possible. So this slot and this slot, we were able to push in just a little bit further. We also enhanced the recesses here at our significant corners. And after that, we started looking at our secondary facade language and how to beef up that frame a little bit. We ended up pulling it out to exaggerate that frame. And then finally, on this street on Grand Union Boulevard, this is our second entry. We expanded the entry presence by stretching the awning out much further across the building, adding, let me go back, adding wood pattern siding and a planter to better define the entry zone. All of that you can see here on the before and after slide. The last point, the entry, we will get into a little bit further down. There was another point of feedback about enhancing that entry presence on this street. Here is another corner view where we did the same study. We looked at, this is the corner of Foley Street and Harold Cohen Way. We did the same study. And here you can see the before and after. We do think it is an improvement. Moving on to the second item, which was to study the presence of the entrance on Grand Union Boulevard. We really liked that, that idea and decided that it made a lot of sense to take the language of the entry on Harold Cohen, which we feel is successful, and bring that over here for consistency of language. We extended the canopy across, added the warmer wood pattern siding, planter, signage, and vertical elements to activate the streetscape and call attention to the entrance. Here on the opposite side of the building, this is the corner of Harold Cohen Way and Auto Workers Way, where you have the future park, kitty corner. And we agreed that it was a bit of a missed opportunity before to connect our amenities space to the park. So we tried to open it up by getting rid of we had a high planter there, which was a physical barrier. We removed that. We extended our glazing closer together and took it up to the second floor, where we may have mechanical spaces that we don't necessarily want to be seen, but we think we can add frit or something to still give it a feeling of openness and connection to the park. The fourth item was to present design solutions to residential unit vent and louver design conditions, if any. This was something that Frank had brought up in relation to the previous project, which was planning on using ERVs. EPOCA, not ERVs, EPOCA systems for heating and cooling with sidewall venting. So we currently do not have that system in our schematic design. However, we have done that in other buildings, and the diagrams here show how we would incorporate it if we do change to that mechanical system. In general, we include it into the window assembly, whether that be below, to the side, or above. Here you can see a building we recently completed in Alston, where we have the vents placed above the glazing, and from the street, you really don't notice it at all. It works pretty well. The next point we heard was to propose possible retail signage locations. So we looked around Assembly Square to see what precedents there are, and there's a wide variety. Sometimes it's above the storefront. Sometimes it's in the level 2 parking band. Ooh. Also, sometimes you can see signage etched or applied to the glass. And then finally, you have side-mounted blade signs. All of these options are available for us. Options 1 and 3 are preferred. However, the signage solution will largely depend on the type and quantity of tenants we end up getting. For Federal Realty, from their perspective, consistency is the most important thing. A couple other items of note.
Can I point out one thing for the sake of the commission right now? Assembly does have an entire set of signage guidelines and standards that will be incorporated and met, so there will be consistency.
Yes, thank you. And that's actually my last point here, is that Block 9 will comply with the Assembly Row signage standards. And the final item I wanted to note related to this is that because this is passive house with the new energy code, we really have to incorporate the storefront design into our building design. It's not something that we can necessarily leave to the control of the tenants. So that is why we're even showing storefront on the lower level, as opposed to in the past where I think it was pretty common for people to just kind of blank out that area. All right, so the last point was design team to look at enlivening the sidewalk and bus stop experience on Grand Union Boulevard. So here again, this sort of goes hand in hand with our enhanced entry presence. We also added benches and or these could be movable planters adjacent to the transformer doors. We just want to point out that any elements adjacent to the transformers are subject to review by Eversource. So hopefully they will be okay with benches here, but we'll have to get their approval.
Do you have a version of the rendering without the car in front?
Not right here, but we could make that for you.
I think we also have plans, right, Kristen, that may help.
Yes. So here I'll turn it over to Amy, our landscape architect, to talk about the interventions here if we keep the bus stop.
Yes. Hi. So as we progressed, we looked at two different options, one with a bus stop and one without a bus stop, and what would we do? So with the first option with the bus stop to activate, as you can see, we've added benches right next to the main entrance. I don't know if Kristen, if you could point it out, as well as some defensible benches over in front of or adjacent to the vault doors. There's already planters on either side of that, so we felt that there was enough planting sort of to activate that area, as well as the architecture. You know, we are going to have a planter, and the canopy and the main entrance have also evolved to be more activating of this space. So those are the main elements added to this option. We can go to, and then the next option is if we got rid of the bus stop, we replaced it with a drop-off area, as you can see in the lower, as well as a perennial or pollinator garden in front of the doors that would allow it. There's a mountable curb, and if they had to get into the doors, they could just mount that and go over the planter to access those doors. So also in front or adjacent to those vault doors, we could have movable pots, as we do further down the sidewalk. As you can see on the retail side, we have a bench and planters on either side. So just trying to carry that language through the street. So that's really how we felt we could activate that area.
Sorry, can you say one more time, the mountable curb in front of?
The mountable curb would be at the street edge. And also we'd probably have we'd have a curb at the perennial bed too, at the pollinator garden, just to protect it from salt and such. But it would be something that a truck could go over to access the doors.
So it would drive over the perennial bed?
Yes. If this is something they have to access it, how often did we feel like they needed to access this?
Once every 20 years.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and full
felt-
disclosure, I'm not sure if Eversource would approve a curb around the perennial garden because they are
Okay.
so particular about a mountable curb at the street edge. But we're trying to show some landscape to better activate the sidewalk here that, you know, so long as it's not a tree,
Right.
that a Eversource truck could traverse through very infrequently, and then we would have to obviously replace or fix any damage.
Maybe.
Really it. So
Just flipping back to the bus stop images.
Yeah.
So I can just compare them.
sure.
And one back from here. Okay. I guess, yeah, just a question would be, why wouldn't the drop off be in front of the vault doors?
It certainly could be. I think that we felt it wanted to be connected to the main building entrance and closer to the retail. Our hope is that we're able to secure a daycare tenant for all of the retail space. So I do think that drop-off zone would be used mornings and nights to the benefit of the retail if we are successful securing a daycare tenant. So that was the thinking. You know, if you're a resident, you call for an Uber, they're gonna come to one of these two entrances. And you know, you probably would feel more safe getting into an Uber where there's outside of occupiable space as opposed to outside of a bunch of transformers. The benefit of moving it down in front of the transformers is obviously it does double duty, where we have more flexibility on how we activate the sidewalk immediately outside of this secondary entrance, without having to worry about Eversource.
Yeah, and what is it, 50 feet between the, you know, where one drop off is versus the other? I hear what you're saying about
Yeah.
connection to the entrance, but I do feel like with appropriate lighting and it just doesn't seem like it would be that hard. And I worry that you're, you know, sort of forsaking some meaningful site improvements. But okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And Sherry, just to give you additional color in case you aren't already aware, this is the existing location of the bus stop. Have been conversations with the Assembly Connect TMA, which includes Brad Rawson at the city, as well as folks from the MBTA bus rerouting on moving the bus stop north of Foley Street. My understanding from these early conversations is that the city nor the MBTA is ready to get rid of the bus stop south of Foley Street at this time, in case that near side bus stop is not successful, that they want to retain the flexibility to relocate the bus stop back to this location. So this is, you know, TBD which of the two options we move forward with, depending on where the city and the MBTA land.
Okay, thanks.
So I think this conversation hits on something important. It's something we talked about last time as well, which is the character of the ground floor of the building along Grand Union, along this expanse where there's ground level parking, transformer vault, and service room, the electrical room on the corner, creating a pretty long expanse of unactivated facade along here. I know we talked about the strategy of activating the south side of the building and that street, and the ability of that to continue beyond. I think you talked about it. Andrew on this commission talked about that. I totally agree with that approach and think you're doing a great job with that. However, it seems like a long expanse of unactivated facade, and it's not typical elsewhere in Assembly Row. Other buildings that face on Grand Union don't have this condition. Even the building next door has retail facing the corner. It's like a wellness studio or something like that. There's an active use that wraps every single one of the corners on that building, even though it does have some area of parking along the facade, which I think is unfortunate. But I wish there could be something, a more active use along this facade on the ground level. And it makes sense for Auto Workers Way to be, you know, the service street. In the adjoining building, the transformers face out onto Auto Workers Way. There's a parking entrance off of Auto Workers Way. There's a loading entrance off of Auto Workers Way. That totally makes sense. But this is, you know, 150, 180 feet of unactivated facade.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tim. I was looking at, you know, could you rotate the transformers, you know, so that they're along on the side street? I also, I wonder if those doors could be beautiful in some way. And I don't know how much they're dictated by, was it Verizon or whatever, but, you know.
Eversource.
Eversource. But you know, could that be an art opportunity if they don't get open that often? You know, they're, you know, maybe they get treated in some way, maybe something in between, you know, architectural, what do you call it? Architectural treatment of it and or art, you know, place for art, you know, that, you know, replicates, you know, that pollinator garden or gives a backdrop for the pollinator garden or something like that. So I still think there could be more, or it's informational, you know, I think is a little harder to do, but I think you could do something wonderful with those doors. And I like the idea of, I mean, the drop off I feel like is really important, either the bus stop or the drop off, mean, I think I would hope the seating it looks like it's movable. I don't know if that's the case, but could that be integrated into the base of the seating into the base of the building? Could there be, it just feels like furniture was put there, to satisfy providing some places to sit. But, I think that either for either the drop off or the bus stop, I think that would be useful to have a lot of seating. And activate the sidewalk.
And do you have an image of those benches again? Just
Sure.
to see exactly what they are. So, yeah, walk me through that.
I was gonna say, so it's the image in the bottom left corner, which is known as a defensible bench, which is a different bench than we're proposing elsewhere. The theory here is it's low profile, so it doesn't stick out as much into the sidewalk, and we're hopeful that Eversource has no issue with this, because they're less likely to hit it. I don't know, Kristen, if you have more to say. I know this bench was being proposed from your office. If I captured that.
Right. Yeah. So these are benches that are used a lot around New York City. And it's exactly what you said, Sarah. We were hoping that the low profile could allow us to get approval from Eversource to have them. We're just not sure that if we have something fully integrated into the building facade, it's going to get approval from Eversource. We certainly can try. They are permanent though. I mean, you could unbolt them, but they're not movable.
And they're to be clear, a standing bench, right? You're not
Leaning.
sitting
Yeah,
90
you're
degrees.
leaning against, those are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you say low profile, yeah, you're meaning the width. I guess
Exactly.
my concern with these is that they're a little bit ableist, to be perfectly honest with you.
Oh.
There's no trunk support. If I were visually impaired, I would not know what this was. And it's the only thing in those areas. So I think they're unique and interesting when they're mixed with other types of actual seating where you have back and armrest that people who need help getting up out of a bench and actually need to rest. This is not a restful bench.
So these benches are just proposed in 2 locations, which are where we have, I think it's a 5-foot separation between transformer doors, 5 or 7 feet, that allows us to slot a bench in. But
Can you
the
zoom in
other,
on the plan just so I can see where those are? It's just hard to see.
yep.
Thanks.
See, maybe if I
Can you just go over those locations with your cursor, Kristen?
let me see if I can zoom in.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So can you put your cursor on them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see the white bars.
Yep, so that's 1 and 2. And then the other 3 benches kind of plan left down Grand Union Boulevard. There's 1. And then 2 more outside of the retail are a more traditional able-bodied sit on it. There's a back bench.
Yeah. I just don't know who's using those unless they truly are waiting for an Uber, I don't know the leaning benches.
And I think that was the intent, right? That someone's waiting for an Uber or a bus. That's why we put them outside the bus stop.
Is the transformer area, is that being designed as a vault, a fully enclosed interior vault, or is this an alcove?
It's more of an
It's an
alcove.
It's an alcove, okay,
Yep,
so this is
so-
not mechanically ventilated, this is open? This is gonna be
Correct.
open grate?
Correct.
Okay.
So there will be 5 roll-up doors for the 3 transformers and the 2 pieces of switchgear. Traditionally, it's like a high, I don't know what the word, but it's been a very open mesh. If you look at Alta Revolution, their roll-up doors, they're very open. However, we were encouraged recently looking at Biomed's transformer doors, which seem to be much more opaque. So I'm hopeful that that means we can get a more opaque door and still get the airflow required, and that Eversource is more flexible on that level of opacity in the mesh of the roll-up doors. Because to Deborah's point, that is something we would like to explore, is potentially extending that graphic that wraps the corner, and can we apply it in a meaningful way on those doors to better activate the streetscape?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it may be that they have a vault, not an alcove. But knowing this is an alcove, that makes me even more concerned about it facing out onto Grand Union. Because typically there is little flexibility. They require the airflow, and it has to be pretty open. And I know there's a number of similar situations, even facing onto Grand Union,
Correct.
and other buildings, but it's usually 2 side by side. It's not 5 side by side. It's mid-block. It's 2 side by side. And it's limited.
Yeah, this is one of the joys of a all-electric building, unfortunately.
So I think if this was, if the transformers were arranged in a way that they were facing onto Auto Workers Way, it wouldn't be an issue at all.
I think, Tim, to speak to that a little bit, Auto Workers Way is chock-a-block full already with the loading dock entry, the trash, the parking garage entry and exit, and none of those things can actually go around the corner here. They couldn't go where the bus stop is, right? So we kind of thought this was the least of all evils. And it is true that with an all-electric building, you just have more frontage that you have to have for these transformers than you did in the past.
Yeah. That all makes sense, and it may be because of that, you're not able to wrap an active use around this corner. There's just too much. But
Yeah.
I think what's really driving it is getting these parking spots on the ground floor. And looking at the original design guidelines for this block, it anticipated parking on upper stories, but not parking on the ground level of the building. If that ground level parking was to be reduced. So you still had access to the upper level, the ramp up, the same access, everything. But you weren't putting spaces or as many spaces on the ground floor. I think that would provide for a little more flexibility.
Are there
Can you
any?
yeah, sorry, can you flip back to the before and afters of the facades and the massing? And I
Sure.
think, yeah,
I don't know, Kristen, if you can make it any bigger.
yeah, it's almost like, and I get that you have limited space on this page, but I almost want to like have them both be the same size because the part we're talking about is so small,
Yeah.
Actually, the ones you sent ahead of time are both full size. They're not.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go, and they may have been updated since they were sent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to get them on the same page.
Right.
Yeah. I can, if it's helpful, I can try sharing from the PowerPoint and then I can resize them.
That's okay. We don't have to jump through too many hoops. I was just trying to compare them. I had to watch the presentation, the recording of the presentation, so it was just a little more difficult to get all.
Sure. Yeah, I wonder maybe I could put one on top of the other.
I mean, I definitely think it's an improvement. I feel like the response to those comments, to, you know, Andrew's comments and Tim's comments, I feel like that's definitely being reflected in the after. And I feel like, you know, you're doing the best you can with the transformer situation. It's just unfortunate because it is an important streetscape that we're trying to really knit together this public realm, and it just feels like a gap, but
Yeah.
there might not be much to be done about such things. But yeah, I think I do feel like there's marked improvement, and I don't know if it's relevant to this meeting or if it was already covered, but the material of the volume on the corner there with all the vertical striations.
Yes.
In one of the images you were looking, it was pretty up close. Maybe it was
Mhm.
one of the renderings that showed the new entrance. Yeah, these the
Let's
one
see.
this
Like this
this one.
one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious about what those materials are and what are they going to look like in real life. It feels rendered there, and I'm just curious. The,
Right. So if I go back to,
oh yeah, thank you.
there you go. Yeah. So it's a ribbed cementatious panel.
Okay, so it's just one
And-
color. It's just the rendering that adds this a little bit more of a variety.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that true? Where is the green? I wish the palette was a little more concise, you know, maybe the green went away or something. But yeah, so there's more coherence to the building. You know, and texture and orientation of panels and things like that, and fenestration becomes what makes these, you know, these sections of it different. But you know, the colors, it seems like the green feels out of place to me, unless, and I guess the color strategy wasn't presented, but maybe there is something with presenting.
Sapir, if you are on, would you like to speak to that? I don't know.
One
Sarah,
moment, let me promote.
Okay.
Sapir. All right, there we go.
Hi, Sapir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have looked at the range of colors. We have the earlier iteration has the red, you know, reddish color, and blue and green. And the red, you know, we look at is, you know, too close to almost like a replica of Outer Revolution next door. And also the blue is also similar to them. And this green is really a deep green and subtle, you know, so we found, you know, this can give this corner a distinctive look. And it's also the coloration, the complementary of green and the beige color, the other panels, you know, works well together. We look at real samples before. So that's our, the reason why we picked this color. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, I think I appreciate the explanation. It feels like the color choices aren't intended to contrast with each other, but work together. It's tough to weigh in on whether it's the right green or not without seeing a physical sample. But it's a big building, so to have a variety of materials seems like it makes sense in using them appropriately to define volumes.
And the final material, we need to kind of carefully study and match the real sample to determine the final material and color. And this is just showing the intent.
Yeah, I guess just having it all different, as opposed to, trying to, color selections are, have either response to the context or the relationship between them is to make emphasis. I guess, just the volumes aren't that well expressed. So, it feels like it's just color that's making them distinct. And I think it could be more interesting if it tries to get woven together. The color, like the color number 4, I don't know if a color number 2 or 4 have some green in them and there's a relationship between them that's subtly different. One is darker, maybe with a little more intensity than the other. I just wish there was more. It just feels random to me. Not supporting a bigger idea.
And is the ribbing irregular like it's shown?
That's right. Yes.
Tim, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, if you have any.
On the texture.
Yeah,
Or-
the texture, I guess. The texture as it relates to the formed metal panel, which I'm assuming is where the cursor is right now. It's how they're adjacent to each other.
If this texture is supposed, because this corner, and we try to express more three-dimensionality, the materials allow. So this, express more verticality in this. We try really hard to, because it's passive house and the site limitation, and we try really hard to have some of the recess and because of the height limitation as well. And we utilize the material and the detail to make these forms, distinctive, to work with the concept. We don't have a lots of room to move, and we're just relying on the texture, the material, and these two corners reflects the verticality and bigger in scale than the other ones. And the ones on top, the more darker materials has more horizontal. It's kind of reflecting kind of lighter materials on top.
I like the idea of a textured panel. I think it's going to be, again, I don't fully understand the scale of the grid, its depth. I think it's going to be a lot more subtle than it appears in this rendering. Here, these look like they're 2-inch deep ribs. That's not what we're proposing. I think seeing this at a larger scale helps maybe emphasize some of Deborah's comments about the colors. And maybe it's that, the dark grays, it's the dark grays that feel a little too similar to each other and carrying across the volumes rather than helping to make the volumes appear separate from each other. Like the horizontal band is running through the, it appears behind the textured panels, but then carries through what is diagrammed as a recess, as a separation between those two pieces. So it's kind of knitting them together rather than making them feel separate.
Yeah, that's understand. We still have to a refinement, in the next phase and, look at all, the detail closely. And we could blend those colors, more closely, kind of make the separation for the two volumes.
I think one other thing, the way this is rendered, it looks like the dark panel is set back from the plane of the cementitious panel. I have a feeling that's not the way it's going to be in reality. Go plane. Is that true?
And they are set back.
And they are set back. Okay.
And again, we don't have a lot of room, so we're trying pretty hard to kind of make this volume works in a way that can express the concept.
I think this is one of the first buildings of this scale we've seen designed to comply with passive house standards too. So there's a lot more solid wall.
Exactly. We really have to play the game of trying to make it seem like there's more fenestration when it's actually insulated wall. We are proud of it being the first big passive house development here in Assembly Square, and that's part of the branding that we're looking to have for this building. We're looking at things like hydroponic farms that the residents can use, and it may be a bit on the nose, but we do like sort of advertising that the building is green, right? And not screaming at you with a green, but we like the connection there as well. Deborah, if that sort of explains to you, that's another reason why we sort of hit upon this muted green.
Yeah, I think the fenestration is actually pretty successful in this. And I think it's going to be a relief in that environment, so I think that is very successful. I wish the color, there was more harmony with the colors and more, just rather than making them different, making them more, their relationships, taking advantage of texture and shadow and stuff like that to make distinctions.
And we early in the design, we did try to make them, more similar, but because of we don't have a lot of room, so it looks like a big block.
Any other discussion points?
I think just one other while this image is up. Appreciate the image that described the signage locations and no, that hasn't been determined yet. And certainly the character of the retail facade will be different depending on whether it's a daycare or something else. But I guess I'd encourage the design of those, that first level or even the first two levels to provide as much flexibility as possible for the tenant identity to extend beyond just the storefront and potentially onto the pier between the storefronts, or just define a retail zone base of the building. I think that's been a really successful part of a number of different buildings around Assembly Square.
Understood.
Okay, just a reminder that we are voting on the massing and the facade, the design guidelines, and any additional design guidance. Can someone make make a motion on the massing and facade?
We also approving, rebadge of design guidelines. Okay.
On the massing and the facade. Can someone make a motion on the massing to approve to accept and approve the massing in the facade?
So
May-
moved.
Yes, so did you just so move, Tim?
I will second.
Okay.
Okay, so Deborah made a motion that we accept the massing in the facade, and Tim seconded that motion. Frank is abstaining. And Andrew's not here, so Sherry, you are voting on this.
Approve, agree, endorse.
Great, thank you. The second thing is design guidelines and any additional design guidance. Do we have any?
We all need to take a vote.
You mean in addition to what was the comments that we made?
I think Tim's question is, don't they all need to vote on the first one? Was that your question, Tim?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, my apologies.
Oh,
So a motion to accept the, hold on, what was it? Massing and facade. We will call the roll then. Frank's not here, Andrew's not, Deborah Fennick,
yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
and Sherry Ruane.
Also, yes.
Great. The second one is the design guidelines and any additional design guidance.
My issue with the design guidelines is that it depicts the ground floor of the building and the character of the facade on the corner. I think we talked about additional exploration of whether it's possible to reconfigure things on the northeast side of the building to improve the character of the Assembly Square Drive. Sorry, Grand Union Drive elevation.
So Tim, are
Right.
you,
Well, I guess that's a question. I'd be comfortable approving them kind of with conditions. You know, with the conditions of the additional design guidance that we provide.
would you like to make a motion to do so?
So should my motion be to conditionally approve them, subject to additional design guidelines? Guidance?
Yes, yes,
So moved.
to approve them with the conditions.
So moved.
Does someone want to second that motion?
Yes, I'll second that. And that is
So-
incorporating the comments that we made. That's incorporated to the past hour, correct?
So the movement, just so we have it on record, is to accept the design guidelines with the conditions that they address the comments that we made in this meeting.
Second,
Seconded by Deborah, and then we will call the roll then to vote on it. Tim Talon,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
yes.
and Sherry Ruane.
Yes.
So that motion has passed.
Do we want to, and I don't know if we can do it here easily, but just summarize like the main bullet points? Because we did talk about a lot of stuff over the last hour. And you know, I also don't know, like, I agree with Tim. I'd love to see those roll-up doors go somewhere else, but I also feel like all the presenters have said it's not really feasible. So I don't know that there would be any change if we just left it at that. I don't know what the next, step would be. If they have to confirm and report back, I don't know how that works exactly, but I guess I would definitely say that this is an important pedestrian realm, and as much as can possibly be done to support that and keep it contiguous and feeling safe, so there isn't a spot that you don't feel safe waiting for an Uber or waiting for the bus. I think I would just really encourage a vigorous effort on that front.
I guess from my perspective, our role as the Urban Design Commission is to provide guidance and recommendations. Ultimately, it'll be the planning board that makes their decision. And I think we could provide guidance so the applicant can continue to work with staff through their design process and hopefully address the feedback.
So to Sherry's point that we discussed many things and we want to just reiterate the most important, would you like to do that?
If it helps, I can, because I have to write the recommendation for the commission. I can do an attempt at that. So the things that I have written down are the investigate reorganizing the plan, especially where the alcoves and the parking are on Grand Union Boulevard, to emphasize a safe and pedestrian realm. I also have incorporate benches into the building design, and possibly move the drop-off and the pollinator planters essentially to flip those with the Eversource vaults location. I'm also going to recommend that we incorporate the standard conditions that we usually recommend for a building of this size, and that would be for you guys to review a material palette prior to building permit, and have investigate on a mock-up on-site an on-site mock-up panel prior to vertical construction. Is there anything that I have missed?
Yeah, there
I
was
think
also
on the-
discussion about doing something with the roll-up doors. If they are staying where they are, I think something can be done with those that, support, a more interesting public realm.
Yeah, agree. And I guess I'd also I think a nuance to that whole bus stop conversation is it seems likely that at least in the short to mid-term, it's going to be a bus stop. So that being true, I think the consideration for where the drop-off goes is maybe less relevant of a conversation, but should it get to that point where it can be modified, again, I don't know how relevant these comments will be at that time if it's like 5 years from now, but my preference would be have the drop-off line up with those doors and make better use of the space that you do have, not just for pollinator garden, but additional trees and site furnishings, and just it's another 50 feet of pedestrian realm that I think becomes important, especially at the entrance there. Like that could really be a robust outdoor space if it weren't a drop-off or, So I would just offer that, but agree with Deborah on if the doors must stay, then certainly there's some intervention that could make them feel a lot less back of house, I think.
All right, I think I
Maybe
got
one
it.
last one would have to do with the materials. We just continue to refine material selections and application on the building to emphasize the overall, I guess, to harmonize and emphasize the overall concept.
All right.
One last comment for the landscape architect, and this is more a reference than anything else. On Monday, we'll have the final pollinator action plan that was done for Somerville. And that really has a lot of data that's specific to Somerville that may help to inform your planting selection.
Great.
Great, thank you.
So in summary, we have voted on the massing, voted on the design guidelines with a condition that the items that Sarah has noted be worked on. Is there anything else in regards to this project? If not, can someone make a motion to end this meeting?
I think we need to vote to incorporate the additional design guidance that Sarah described.
Wasn't that a condition? Didn't we just vote that those were the conditions? If you'd like to vote on that separately, we can. I just need someone to make a motion.
Just to be safe, I'll make the motion.
Someone needs to make a motion.
Tim made a motion, I'll second.
Okay, so Tim moved that the list that Sarah is keeping be a condition of approval. Is that correct?
To be
Additional
provided.
design guidance.
Okay. So let's vote on that. Tim, just for the sake of clarity, can you please repeat what you moved, please?
Motion to incorporate the additional design guidance. Sarah described.
Thank you. Roll call, Tim,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
and Sherry.
Yes.
And Sarah, not to make this any more complicated than it needs to be, but do we need a vote to approve the design guidelines that were presented?
That was the second vote. that
Okay.
took place.
I just wanted to
So
make sure.
you're-
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
No, and that's technically not required, but you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments on this project? And I would like to thank the applicant for coming before the Urban Design Commission and to ask someone to move that we adjourn the meeting.
I will move that we adjourn the meeting.
Would
Second.
someone, seconded by Deborah? In that case, have a wonderful evening. And this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.